Hello, and thank you for clicking on the Literacy Volunteers of Harrison County YouTube channel. We're a nonprofit United Way agency. Today we're continuing on with our Handling the HiSet series. This is part 5 on the language arts writing portion of the test. You will be given 75 minutes to answer 51 multiple choice questions on these topics: constructing sentences, using grammar correctly, using words correctly, organizing ideas into paragraphs, and connecting ideas. We're going to look at a couple of those today. The first thing we want to look at are simple sentences. In a simple sentence, we have at least one subject and one verb. The subject is the person, place, thing, and they also give us later the idea that the sentence is talking about, the noun. We also call that the noun. The subject performs an action. That action is the verb. That's the word that will tell us what action that the subject is performing. Or it will link the subject to its modifier. And a little bit later, when we link them with a modifier, that's called a predicate. And a little bit later in this lesson, we'll talk about predicates. But right now we're looking at simple sentences. So here's an action verb. Here's our example in our sentence. Mary took notes on the meeting. Mary is our subject. She's our noun, the person. And what did she do? She took notes. So that's a simple sentence. Linking verb, they were short. They is the subject, were is the verb, and the modifier, what they were, is short. That describes the people, the subject, they, them. If the sentence is missing either the subject or the verb, it is what's called incomplete. And a lot of the teachers will call that a fragment. We don't have a complete sentence. We don't have a complete idea. It's just a fragment of a sentence, just a portion. A complete sentence must also express a complete thought. So if you have just a little portion of a thought, that's not a complete sentence. And it also should have correct end punctuation, a period, and a exclamation point, a question mark, whatever the appropriate punctuation would be for that sentence. Compound and complex sentences, the simple sentences we just discussed, are called independent clauses. They have a subject and a verb and a complete thought. That's all together. Mary took notes on the meeting. That's all one complete thought with a subject and a verb. We can join two or more of these independent clauses to make one compound sentence. So compound would be, larger or more. So we're going to join those two thoughts together, those two independent clauses, and give us one big compound sentence. It says, so you should, 1, choose a logical coordinating conjunction. And those are and, but, or, nor, for, so, and yet. Make sure you're using the correct one of those, and we're going to put a comma before that coordinating conjunction. So Sam saw a design flaw, comma, so, coordinating conjunction, he wrote a memo. That could be two separate sentences. Sam saw a design flaw, period, so he wrote a memo, period. But we're hooking them together with that comma and that coordinating conjunction to make it a compound sentence. So your writing seems a little bit more sophisticated when you use compound sentences. We want to be sure that the coordinating conjunction expresses the correct relationship between the two ideas in these two independent clauses. So here's relationships between ideas and what coordinating conjunction we may want to use. If we want to join two equally important ideas, we put and. We are going to the store and buying milk. And we put those are two important things. If we want to contrast two ideas, we would put but or yet. We are going to the store, but we don't have any money. So those are kind of, different ideas. If we want to show a cause, we would put for. We want to give them a choice, we would put so. And if you don't have any choices, that's nor. We are neither going to the store, nor do we have any money, right? There is no choice, there's nothing there. And then we also have complex sentences. Those are made up of those independent clauses and what's called a subordinate clause. Sub means under, right? So it has a subject and a verb, but it doesn't express a complete thought. It's subordinate. It's not as good as a complete sentence. It's just a clause, and if we tack it to this independent clause, then we can make a complex sentence. Here's our example. Coal miners went on strike because their pay was too low. Coal miners went on strike is a complete sentence. That's our independent clause. If we put our comma and we add our word here, then their pay was too low is our subordinate clause. So that gives us a complete or a complex sentence. Every subordinate clause begins with a subordinate conjunction. That shows the relationship between the subordinate clause and the independent clause. That one is independent, it can stand alone, but the other one is subordinate. So when we're looking at the relationship between those clauses, we have certain subordinate conjunctions. If we have a cause or reason something is happening, it is raining outside because the humidity is high. That tells us the reason why it's raining outside. Sometimes we may want to look for an effect or a result, right? We will take our umbrella so that we will stay dry when it's raining outside. And then we have time. We can look at something happens after, as, before, once, since, until, when, whenever, while. We were standing in line while they were looking at tickets. A place, that's where or wherever. A choice, if or whether. And a contradiction, although, even though, though. Although we had our umbrella, we still got wet. When a subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of a sentence, we're going to put a comma after it, just like that. Although we had our umbrella, comma, we still got wet, period. If it comes at the end, we generally don't need a comma before it. We just put it at the end of the sentence. Another problem, or kind of problems that people have in writing, besides fragments, are the other end of the spectrum. It's called a run-on sentence. We have too many words, right? Or comma splices. Run-ons are when two independent clauses are combined without proper punctuation. We just run them all together. She sold Girl Scout cookies, you should try some. That we don't even have any punctuation in that sentence. We're running two sentences together without proper punctuation. A run-on sentence can also consist of an independent clauses strung together with the word and. Sometimes people, when they're writing, will just keep putting sentences together and adding the word and hooking them together. Banking is getting more and more convenient, and you can check on your account using bank by phone services, and it's possible to do your banking on the internet. Those are all separate sentences that whomever wrote this just stuck together with the word and. That's a run-on sentence. You don't want to do that. Comma splices are another problem. When we get two sentences and they're joined just with a comma, to correct this, we have to add that coordinating conjunction after the comma. So you can check on your account using bank by phone services, comma, it's possible to do your banking on the internet. We don't want to leave that comma out because then we have a run-on sentence. And so we have to leave that. We have to put our commas in the right place. The next thing that we want to look at are subordinate ideas. Those are used to eliminate those short, choppy little sentences. We went to the store, period. We got milk, period. We got eggs, period. Those are choppy sentences. We want to use some different ideas to get rid of those choppy sentences. If two sentences have the same subject, we can combine them, and then we form a sentence with a compound predicate. Remember, I told you we would see that word again. A predicate is the verb plus anything else that's not part of the subject. So, Mary sat on the beach, comma, and looked at the ocean. Right? We could also combine two sentences with the same predicate. Here we've combined them with the same subject. Mary, she did both of these things. She sat on the beach and she looked at the ocean. And then Sam and Diane went swimming, right? These are the two people who went swimming together. And then modify ideas. Modifiers are words and phrases that add descriptive detail. They modify, they help, they make it better. Here's our example. Words like sweaty, words like towing a massive car, that's a verb phrase. From the box, that's a prepositional phrase. They make our writing more interesting and more specific so that someone wants to read it. You don't want someone to pick up your writing and then they put it down immediately and go, this is too bad, I don't want to read this. On the HiSet test, you have to write an essay. We're going to talk about that later on. But right now we're building the foundation of how we're going to write our essay and make it interesting for our reader. The last thing we're looking at here is parallel structure. When writing a sentence that lists two or more words, phrases, or clauses, the elements in the list must be in the same grammatical form. They're forming a whole. This is not parallel. Jill wants to eat less, exercise more, and be getting more sleep. Those are not parallel. To make that parallel, we say Jill wants to eat less, exercise more, and get more sleep. So those all go together. We're not mixing and matching things that don't sound right together. To make sure our sentences have this parallel structure, we have to look at all the verbs and make sure they're in the same form and tense as we're listing things. We have to make sure our phrases are parallel in form and in wording in our list. Each list must have single words, right? Short phrases or clauses. Don't put single words and clauses together in the same series. Don't list, we need to get milk, butter, and eggs with, we need to get milk, stay in the buggy, get butter. You want to make your list, they all are the same. You're listing one word or you're listing phrases. A comma separates each item within a list of 3 or more: low impact, informal, and home-based. If we were listing those in a sentence, we've got those certain things that are all the same. Writing style. Writing should be more or less formal. You don't write like you text message people, or you don't write like you're just having a brief conversation with somebody. You have to write so that it sounds better, right? It sounds more formal. It has to be on the purpose of the writing and who will be reading it. When you're writing for the HiSet, someone's grading that, someone's reading that. They're not your friend. It's not an informal conversation that you're just talking to them on the street. You have to make it interesting and cohesive, something they want to read. Passive voice and wordy construction should be avoided, and it needs to be understood by a general audience. And then also your tone is neutral. You don't take it one side or the other unless they are asking you to do so. When we talk about things that are easy to understand, you have to write it toward the middle. Don't add a bunch of flowery words and stuff that people won't understand, or an idea that's too hard to find and too difficult to find in there. Just make it to the point and make sure that all of your sentences are grammatically correct. And that's some important things that we need to know for the HiSet, the language part. Please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends, and stay tuned for part 6.